Salesforce spent a lot of money on these acquisitions, right? $26 billion for Slack.
And Slack CEO Stewart Butterfield is reportedly set to exit Salesforce in January.
Stewart Butterfield has failed at making video games twice. Both times, the failure made him a billionaire. That is not a normal outcome for sucking at something, right? That is not how failure is supposed to work, yet here we are. One of this dude's products is being endorsed heavily by the biggest YouTuber in the world, Mr. Beast, and was being promoted on the biggest competition game show in history, Beast Games.
For this commercial to air, I'm so freaking excited. I love Slack.
The man who co-founded Flickr and Slack, two of the most culturally significant internet products of the last 25 years, was born Dharma Jeremy Butterfield in a log cabin in rural British Columbia without running water or electricity. His father had fled the United States to avoid being drafted for the Vietnam War. His family lived on a commune. A very interesting upbringing for a tech mogul, no doubt. My man Dharma changed his name to Stewart at around 12 years old. Obviously, Stewart Butterfield is not a normal tech founder. He's not a dropout who learned to code in a garage. He's not a former investment banker who spotted a market gap in a spreadsheet. He has a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of Victoria and a master of philosophy from Cambridge. He studied the nature of human existence and then used that knowledge to build one of the fastest growing enterprise software companies in the history of Silicon Valley out of a video game nobody played, twice. The name Slack is actually an acronym. It stands for Searchable Log of All Conversation and Knowledge. Nobody calls it that. But the fact that it has a hidden meaning is somehow extremely on brand for a philosopher who accidentally built a $27 billion company. This is the story of how Stewart Butterfield failed at making video games and accidentally changed the way the entire world works. Literally. Before we get to Slack, we need to talk about Flickr. Depending on how old you are will determine whether you remember this company being huge in the mid-2000s. Because Flickr is actually the first time Stewart Butterfield failed upwards. And understanding how it happened is the key to understanding how badass everything was that came after. In 2002, Butterfield was obsessed with multiplayer games. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a huge gamer myself, and multiplayer online competition is an addiction. So to follow what he was passionate about, he co-founded a company called Ludicorp and began building a multiplayer online game called Game Neverending, a game where players could interact with each other and manipulate objects in a shared virtual world. It was ambitious, creative, and genuinely interesting. It was also so complicated that almost nobody wanted to play it. Unfortunately, because of how complex it was, it only ever had beta users and was never publicly released. But while building Neverending, the team had added a feature, a small, almost throwaway feature that allowed players to share photos and images with each other inside the game. Players were barely actually playing the game. They loved being able to share stupid or fun photos with their friends and random people online. Butterfield and his co-founder, his then wife, Katarina Fake, looked at what their users were actually doing rather than what they designed them to do. So they made what turned out to be an incredible decision, and they killed the game. They spun out of the photo feature, and in 2004, they launched Flickr, the first place on the internet where users could interact with each other's photos. People sometimes forgot how early Flickr came, Butterfield later said. Facebook didn't add photo sharing until a year after Flickr was acquired by Yahoo. In March 2005, Yahoo acquired Flickr for a reported $20 million. Game Neverending was a failure and was killed. Flickr was worth $20 million. Filed away in the back of Stewart Butterfield's mind. Sometimes the thing you accidentally build while trying to build something else is more valuable than the thing you were trying to build. That one is a tongue twister, but it makes sense. And you would need to remember that lesson. After the acquisition, Butterfield stayed on at Yahoo as general manager of Flickr. Initially, things were fine. Yahoo increased user storage from 20 megabytes to 100 megabytes and seemed genuinely enthusiastic about the product. Then the reality of working inside a giant corporation began to set in. It was impossible to squeeze money to hire people, Butterfield said. Even when YouTube was 1/20th of Flickr's size, they had twice as many people working on it. You just couldn't do things you wanted to do. There are big plans we had back in 2006 and 2007 that Flickr still hasn't done. For a founder who had built a scrappy, fast-moving product by instinct, watching Flickr slowly suffocate inside Yahoo's bureaucracy was genuinely painful. In 2008, Butterfield left Yahoo with one last cheerful and bizarre letter, his hallmark humor intact as he headed out the corporate door. The letter is worth mentioning because it tells you everything about who Stewart Butterfield is and his sense of humor. Rather than a standard professional farewell, Butterfield wrote a mock formal resignation to the internet, thanking various entities including his parents, the World Wide Web, and San Francisco. It was absurdist, warm, and completely unserious. You can't fully understand Slack without understanding that the person who built it has a genuine and lifelong sense of humor about everything, including his own failures. Which brings us to the second failure. I'm a gamer myself, so hearing about these accidents makes me want to at least try to build something fun and see what happens. Keep watching, because we're going to go from a $20 million accident to a $1 billion accident. After leaving Yahoo in 2008, Butterfield was ready for a new challenge. In 2009, he co-founded TinySpec and began working on another multiplayer game called Glitch. Now, at this point you might be asking, Stewart, you already failed at making a video game once. You accidentally built Flickr instead. You sold it for $20 million. Why are you going back to try and make a video game again? And the answer apparently was because he really wanted to make a video game. Hell yeah, man. Do your thing, right? As I mentioned, he was obsessed with multiplayer games and wanted to transform the industry by making it more fun and social. So he built a new company with some of the original Flickr team and began building Glitch. A game based on a pretty similar idea to Game Neverending. Glitch was an online game set inside the brains of 11 giants. It was non-combat, artful, weird, and genuinely unlike anything else being made at the time. It was free to play with optional in-game purchases. It was beautiful. It was original. It had a devoted cult following of players who absolutely loved it. It just didn't have enough of them. Would you want to download and play a game based on being inside the brains of 11 giants? Maybe, but it sounds like a hard sell even for me, and I love weird games. The game launched in September 2011, but failed to attract a large enough audience to be sustainable. In November 2012, Butterfield confirmed Glitch's fate on the startup's blog, noting that the team had developed some unique messaging technology with applications outside of the gaming world, and that a smaller core team would be working to develop new products. Then he tweeted something cryptic. To be clear, TinySpec is not closing, just Glitch. There will be more to say about that in the future, but you'll know it well. Everyone speculated. One reporter predicted he was building another photo sharing service, and holy shit was he right. Everyone would know it really well. Here's the part of the story that makes Slack genuinely interesting as a business case. Slack wasn't necessarily invented, it was discovered. Butterfield and the TinySpec team were old school web people. They used IRC, a text-based internet messaging system from the 1980s, to communicate while building Glitch.
Used one of those technologies that I first discovered back in 1992, IRC, or Internet Relay Chat.
Eventually, IRC wasn't enough for what they needed. Rather than switching to an existing team messaging tool, they built their own. And then they kept making it better, adding features, fixing things that annoyed them, integrating it with tools they used every day. Then they added hacks to include more features, and then added more hacks, and more hacks. So when TinySpec pulled the plug on Glitch in 2012, they had a customized, turbocharged team communication platform sitting there, one they'd been using and making better for years. They hadn't built it to sell. They hadn't built it for a market. They had built it because they needed it and nothing else did what they needed. And that, it turns out, is exactly the right way to build software. When Glitch failed, Butterfield and his team looked at what they could not stop using while everything else was slipping away. The internal messaging tool had proven itself under stress, day after day, because it had been built for their own survival. The question they asked themselves was simple. Could it survive with value outside of their own studio? When the plug was pulled on Glitch, Butterfield did something almost no startup founder does when a company fails. He spent a full month with the skeleton crew personally helping every one of the 30 employees they had to let go find new jobs before moving on. An Act 1 journalist noted they had never seen at any startup before or since. That shows the character of this dude, a true gentleman who cared about people. Then the small remaining team turned their full attention to the tool. In August 2013, Butterfield announced the release of Slack, an instant message-based team communication tool built by TinySpec while working on Glitch. The Slack launch was immediately unlike anything the enterprise software world had seen. It received 8,000 sign-up requests from businesses and organizations, not individuals, businesses, on the first day. Within 2 weeks, it had 15,000 business sign-up requests. These were companies that came from pure word of mouth, wanted to pay money to use it, which is unusual for most new startups. Immediate traction and results? Pretty crazy, right? Slack's public release in February 2014 marked the beginning of a new era in workplace communication. The platform grew at an astonishing rate of 5 to 10% weekly, with over 120,000 daily users in the first week of August 2014 alone. Slack grew from zero to a $1 billion valuation in just 8 months, without spending anything on marketing. Zero, zilch, nada, nothing. For context, most enterprise software companies spend enormous amounts on sales teams, conferences, and advertising just to get people to try their product. Slack grew to a $1 billion valuation entirely through people telling other people about it, which almost never happens in business software. Business software is famously unglamorous. Nobody tells their friends about their favorite spreadsheet program. Nobody tweets about how much they love their company's HR portal. But people genuinely loved Slack. And the reason they loved it comes back to who built it and why. What set Slack apart was its focus on user experience and integration capabilities. Butterfield and his team applied lessons learned from consumer products like Flickr to create a business tool that was actually enjoyable to use. This sounds obvious. It was actually revolutionary. Enterprise software had spent decades being built for the people who purchased it, the IT departments and procurement managers, rather than the people who actually used it every day. Slack was built by people who were furious about bad tools and used it themselves constantly. They built it for the user first, and the user responded accordingly. The mission, as Butterfield described it, was simple: to make people's working lives simpler, more pleasant, more productive. Not to win a procurement contract, not to get a CIO to sign an enterprise agreement, to make the person staring at the screen at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday feel slightly less miserable about it. That philosophy, so obvious in hindsight, so rare in practice, is what turned a failed video game's internal chat tool into one of the most important software products of the 21st century. Of course, nothing this good goes unnoticed for long. Microsoft, whose Teams product hadn't even launched until early 2017, watched Slack's explosive growth and made a decision. They would bundle their competing product directly into Office 365. Every company already paying for Microsoft's suite of tools would get Teams automatically included at no extra cost. It was the software equivalent of a nuclear option. By late 2020, Slack had grown their user base to 12 million daily active users. Microsoft Teams had exploded to 115 million. The disparity was almost entirely based on Microsoft's ability to flip a switch and instantly activate Teams for every existing Office 365 customer worldwide. Slack hadn't lost on product quality. They hadn't been out-innovated. They'd been out-bundled by a company with a 40-year head start in enterprise software sales and relationships. Microsoft had passed on buying Slack earlier for a fraction of what it would eventually cost. Now, they were competing against it with effectively unlimited resources and a distribution advantage that no startup could match. Still, that startup was worth an absurd amount by 2020. Let's see if you can believe the number. In December 2020, Salesforce confirmed plans to buy Slack Technologies for $27.7 billion, the largest acquisition in Salesforce history. $27.7 billion for a tool that was built accidentally while trying to make a video game that nobody played. Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff called it a match made in heaven and described the combination as something that would shape the future of enterprise software and transform the way everyone works in the all-digital, work-from-anywhere world.
This marriage of Slack and Salesforce together, well, you said it right. It's a marriage made in heaven, and we could not be more excited about this combination.
And he wasn't wrong, because the timing of the acquisition, December 2020, right in the middle of a global pandemic that had forced every office in the world to go remote overnight, meant that Slack's core value proposition had never been more relevant or more urgently needed. The world had spent decades largely ignoring the problem of how people collaborate when they're not in the same room. Then COVID happened, and suddenly that problem was the only problem anyone was trying to solve. Things like Slack and Zoom were about to be the most important tools in a company's arsenal. The tool Stewart Butterfield built because his video game team needed to stay in touch while working remotely in 2009 was now the solution to a problem that the entire global economy was grappling with simultaneously. In December 2022, Butterfield announced his departure as CEO of Slack and left Salesforce in early January 2023. He walked away from a $27.7 billion exit, built from a failed game, using a tool he'd made for himself for the second time in his career. Here's the thing about Stewart Butterfield that nobody really talks about. He never set out to build Flickr. He never set out to build Slack. Both of his billion-dollar companies were accidents, byproducts of projects that didn't work, built for an audience of one, discovered rather than invented. Both of Butterfield's successful ventures were pivots away from failing startups. Flickr from a game called Game Neverending, and Slack from a game called Glitch. And that pattern, failing at the thing you intended to build and accidentally succeeding at something else entirely, is actually more common in the history of technology than most people realize. Viagra was developed as a blood pressure medication. Post-it notes were invented when a researcher was trying to make a super strong adhesive and made a weak one instead. The microwave was discovered when an engineer walked past a radar tube and his chocolate bar melted. The best products in history are rarely the ones someone set out to build. They're the ones that reveal themselves through the process of building something else. What makes Butterfield unusual isn't that he stumbled into success twice. It's that he was paying close enough attention to recognize what he'd accidentally built, and humble enough to abandon what he planned to build in order to pursue it. Most founders fall in love with their original idea and can't let go. Butterfield fell in love with what his users were actually doing. The log cabin kid from British Columbia who studied philosophy at Cambridge went on to fail at video games twice, and in doing so, accidentally invented two of the defining internet products of his generation. The name Slack stands for Searchable Log of All Conversation and Knowledge, built by a philosopher who spent his career paying very close attention to how people actually talk to each other. Maybe it wasn't an accident after all. I also think it goes to show you that if you have an idea or really want to get something started, you should go for it no matter what, even if your original ideas fail. The pursuit of that dream or idea is fulfilling in and of itself, and who knows what incredible other opportunities come with it along the way. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for a scoop of success.